Whoever's in so far, let me know how the audio is. You can let me know in the comments. Most of those that I've sent a text to or let know that I was going live, there's a reason for this. We all have different backgrounds. We all have different circles. But you know what? A lot of us are still in the same land. We're still in the same place. We're in the same environments with just different places. There's a friend of mine, some would consider an acquaintance. And this person doesn't even live in this country. That person told me that this country has something that really no other country does, at least not equivalent to it. And I have a deep conviction to do this, to read this. And I wanted to kind of wait till we have a few more people in here. Doesn't appear that we have anybody right now, but that's okay. That's fine. I'll stay here until we get a few people. However long this needs to take to get warmed up until I have a few people, I'll do it. But in the meantime, I want to talk about something that's more mystical and mythical more than it is anything else. But the point behind it is, so many years ago, so many millennia ago, it gave people something to believe in. They upheld it. They trusted in it. They believed it would protect them. And they carried it high. Moses' Ark of the Covenant was formed of acacia wood. It was a box. And it was about 52 inches long, 31 inches wide, and about 31 inches tall. And it supposedly held Aaron's budded rod, the tablets of the covenant, or the 10 commandments, the 2 tablets that held the most basic of laws that were required. The simplest things. The hidden manna, the golden vessel with the manna in it, the manna from heaven. This is the knowledge. This is the power behind it. It was wrapped in gold. It was covered in gold. It had 2 angels on it. Their wings would touch. They would be what the back of God or the Lord would rest against. And it was to be veiled. It was to be covered. Now, nobody seems to know where this is, nor any of the things that were removed from the temple with it. For all most consider is that it's folklore and mythology, and it never actually existed. But it's the idea that matters. It's the existence of the idea itself that makes a difference. The power of the ark was not the object itself. It was the belief within the ark itself. It was believing that whatever that was where God would be. Now, today I can understand this in a completely different manner. But the truth is, there's something else that the people who carried an exodus from Britain, from the European continent to this continent, the United States, the Americas, north and south, middle, whatever's above in Canada, that was an exodus. They were fleeing tyranny. Taxes upon taxes upon taxes with no relief. And today, 248 years later, we're back in the same position that we were in 1776 when the Declaration of Independence was signed. So today, I would like to read that declaration because I don't think many people have, and it's probably been a decade since I actually sat down and read it, but little did I understand what was actually in that declaration until I read it earlier. And it put a great conviction on my heart that more people should know it, that more people should read it, because it wasn't anything more than about freedom. It was about standing up to injustice. It was about saying no to tyranny. It was about saying no to not having the freedom to say, to choose. That's what it was about. I was hoping I would have more people in here. I hope whoever's here can share and let me know who's here. Let me know that you're in here. Let me know who you are, please, in the comments, in the live chat. Let me know who you are. Share it with whoever you can. I would really like to have a few more people in here before I start reading this. I'm not going to get rid of the live stream, so it will be there for anybody to see. But in a time where people do not speak face to face as much anymore, where we communicate through little screens like we are now, and we text, we don't get to do it in live time. We don't get to do it looking at each other. Sure, you can imagine who you're talking to, but today it doesn't mean that's what that is. And I want to be able to relay this to you while you're here. So I'm going to move forward. I pulled this up directly from the National Archives. The unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women today are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men and women, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. Accordingly, all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government, to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies and now states. Such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government, our former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these United States. To prove this, Let facts be submitted to a candid world. They have refused assent to law, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. They have forbidden their governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance, unless suspended in their operation till their assent should be obtained. And when so suspended, they have utterly neglected to attend them. They have refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. They have called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with their measures. They have dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness their invasions on the rights of the people. They have refused for a long time after such dissolutions to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within. They have endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws of naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations here, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of land. They have obstructed the administration of justice by refusing their assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. They have made judges dependent on their will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. They have erected a multitude of new offices and agencies and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. They have kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. They have affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. They have combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving their assent to their acts of pretended legislation, for quartering large body of armed troops among us, for protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us, in many cases, of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government, and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule in these colonies. I'm going to step aside real quick and mention that Hawaii was one of those. For taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments. That is to amend what was there. For suspending our own legislators and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. They have abdicated government here by declaring us out of their protection and waging war against us. They have plundered our seas and ravished our coasts, burned our towns and destroyed the lives of our people. They are at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny, already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation. They have constrained our fellow citizens, taking captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their own hands. There is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislator to attend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our emigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and consanguinity. We must, therefore, acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation and hold them as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace, friends. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress, assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by authority of the good people of these states, solemnly publish and declare that these United States are, and of right, ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to any crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. For the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Now, in reading this, I have slightly altered what's said instead of he, as in the crown, and they, meaning our current tyrants. It's to be understood that we are under tyranny, but even the tyrants are under control of commerce. Commerce has taken a hold of them. They are slaves to the commercial giants. They bow their knees to the commercial giants. They also invest in the same ones. They all put their money in one pot. You must ask yourself, do you hear the cries from 248 years ago? Which I find interesting. because Pluto has an orbit of 247.7 years, and from 1776 to 2023 is 247.7 years to about this point. We are one cycle of one of our furthest out planets. I'm sorry. They said it's not a planet anymore. You need to ask yourself, are we going to follow the example that was set forth before us? Because if so, we have to fight this battle not in the way that they have. Two wrongs don't make a right. Anybody with half a brain will know, anybody that has tried to stand up in the past and has tried to affect the order of their course, their blood is shed in some crazy way, or they're framed in some crazy way. So I ask you, are you tired of tyranny? Are you tired of paying everything that you earn to taxes, on taxes, upon taxes, upon taxes, upon taxes, with no appropriation, no enumeration, and no census? That means they don't have to tell us why or for what. They don't have to tell us how much is going where, and they don't have to have our opinion. And that goes directly against the Declaration of Independence, and that is your 16th Amendment. The 16th Amendment, ratified in 1913, declares Congress shall have the power to lay and levy taxes on any income derived with no appropriation, enumeration, or census. This means that Congress can determine how they change the money in the temple of law without ever asking anybody that money comes from. Now, this creates a conundrum, because if we were to say we need to abolish the 16th Amendment, there would be plenty in defense that would say, well, we need to abolish a lot more than that. We don't need to abolish it. We need to revise the revisions. They need to be just revisions. And they need to have the opinion, even in the simplest form, of the people. There should be no reason why we pay close to 50% of all of our income to taxes, upon taxes, upon taxes, while big corporations and businesses get tax breaks because we pay all the taxes. It was a few years ago that places like BP and ExxonMobil and Shell were in negative tax brackets. And I believe it was BP was in a negative 19% tax bracket. Now, I don't know about you, but I started at a 16% tax bracket. And that was before I paid sales tax on everything I had to buy. That was before I paid taxes on a vehicle every single year. That's before I had to pay whatever they chose I had to pay for property taxes on anything. This is just like being under the British Crown. Have we forgotten this? Have we? The one thing that they know not how to do is to resolve things peacefully, with dialogue and discussion, with compromise and agreement. They don't know how to do it. At least it doesn't appear that way. So it's going to be up to the people to do it. But we can't use the same tactics they do. We can't threaten them the way they've threatened us. And they are trying everything they can to close every gap in every window and every door that exists for us. It's getting to the point where we can't even protest. We can't appeal because nobody will answer an email or a letter. Now, the people can't even enter the temple of law because of an enactment that happened on January the 6th. The people cannot even go to the steps and voice their concerns now for fear of retaliation and fear of going to jail. This is tyranny. So it's time we bring ourselves together as our forefathers did, even though they didn't agree with us. They may not have agreed with each other, not on everything, but they all stood for one common thing because they knew it was the right thing. They knew if they didn't do something then, any hope would be lost. So how would you today, for your own future, for your children's future, for your children's children's future, how would you like to move forward and approach the government that you pay, but they won't listen? How would you do it? Will you run for president? Records show there were over 1,000 people who ran for president in 2020. How many of those names did you hear? How many of them did you hear? You heard about 10 of them at the most, right? Maybe 6. The two-party system isn't working. Not when it's capped all over. It doesn't work. It's not going to work. I encourage you to go read the Declaration of Independence on your own and go through and do a search of the words. I'm quite aware of the legalities in those words. I don't want to make this very much longer. So with that, I'm going to say, I hope that you'll think about what I've said today, what I've read to you, and listen to the emotion in my voice. I'm a dad that didn't have my dad for a very long time. But you know what? At this point, I need to stand for my own child, for the future, for her future, for your children's future. Because at any rate, that's all that matters right now. It's not about us. It's about them. Have a blessed day. I love you all.